Hi folks, it's Andy and welcome to today's Kendo rant. Let's get stuck into the questions. Okay. Hi Andy, thanks for the video. Was aware of the Nafuda controversy, but didn't know it extended to Tsuki. That's obviously in response to the rant that I did yesterday about the term Nafuda being preferred over Zekken or Tarenem for the Nafuda or the Zekken. I prefer the term Zekken. But anyway, I have a question for future Kendo rant or even a Kendo show video. Could you talk about how to develop a dynamic kamae that is both relaxed and elastic? Okay. Obviously, it's very difficult. It's one thing is that it comes with practice. The thing about your kamae, obviously, the best is to just try and be as relaxed as possible. You can't be too relaxed. If you're too relaxed, it can be a bit like this. You know, have to have a bit of tension in your back. You don't want your shoulders too sort of spread out, but not too in together. Nice relaxed amount, but a rigid. I wouldn't say rigid, but you need some sort of rigidity to your posture. So that it's correct and also strong, but you have to be as relaxed as possible when you're holding the shinai, except for the very bottom fingers here that need to be gripping it. And then in terms of how to develop that sort of relaxed and elastic thing, I mean, the thing about it being elastic is it does require some sort of tension, so there has to be some sort of, there has to be a sort of coiled spring in there that's gonna sort of launch you off, and that really comes from your hands, that left hand here holding the shinai, and the bit of tension here in these two fingers, and also in your left calf. All right, so when you're studying your kamae, you want tension in your left calf so that you're ready to attack instantly without moving your left foot instantly, and then everything else needs to be relaxed. Okay, because if you've got tension in your arms, you're going to move slowly. You're not going to move quickly. Okay, so you have to try and think about all of that and just have tension there so that you can snap and go. Now, how to develop that is quite difficult because obviously it's it's easy to say, oh well, relax, but if it was that easy, then many of us wouldn't struggle with it, which we do. So unfortunately, the best cure for it is like kiri-kaeshi. Kiri-kaeshi, stuff like that is really good for it. Do loads of kiri-kaeshi because you get really tired, and being really tired prevents you from putting in too much tension because you don't have the energy to do so. It's not a fun answer, unfortunately, but if you do loads of kiri-kaeshi, it is one of the things that will definitely help improve your overall relaxation in your kendo, and the kind of elasticity in your kendo is doing kiri-kaeshi. A couple of things you have to do when you're doing kiri-kaeshi again is you have to make sure that you're kind of relaxed. Yeah, step into your distance, and then you swing the shinai for your first shomen, and arms straight out, tayatari. Then you start to do your left and right men strikes. I'm not swinging the shinai as much as I could because I don't want to hit the wall behind me, but left and right men strikes. And as you get more advanced, obviously at the beginner levels, you should do that nice and slowly and correctly. As you get more advanced, then that becomes more fluid and more kind of, I don't like to use the word rhythmic, but kind of it has more of a rhythm to it, let's say. And that actually bleeds into the rest of your kendo. So I actually think kiri-kaeshi is one thing that will definitely help it. Okay. Next, I think it was a video I watched with you a long time ago, but I remember someone saying when practicing with a high-level sensei, it was polite to strike only men. Can you clarify or expand on this, as I've tried to incorporate this into my jigeko, but often my sensei comment that I should do different strikes, such as kote or at least kote men. Thank you for your help. Right. It could have been something that you heard me say. I don't think I would have said it's polite to only strike men, because that's not really true. And if I did say that, I was wrong too. But what I might have said is when I do jigeko with a high-level sensei, I only attack men, because generally I do. But that doesn't mean I just randomly attack men. I only attack men because that's what I want to. My sort of thing is that if I can't hit men at the points when I want to, then I don't really want to hit other waza. But that's my own personal take on the keiko. You certainly, are perfectly welcome to strike kote or kote men. It's certainly not impolite to do so. What's important, I think what you've got to remember is that when you're practicing with sensei, it's not your goal to achieve victory, right? Or to beat them. I'll tell you a story, okay? We are going a bit more into rant mode now. It's more like story time now. Several years ago, many years ago, when I first moved to Japan, shortly after, I joined a dojo, and the sensei at the dojo that I was practicing at, I really loved that dojo. I really missed practicing there. I still miss practicing there. He was a 7th dan, and he was much older than me. He was in his 70s, and he still had very, kind of very strong, very correct kendo, of course. And basically, we'd practice 3 times a week, and he would actually go and practice at another practice for an hour. He'd stand as motodachi for jigeko before coming to our dojo, which started an hour later than the other practice. So he'd go and practice at the other place for an hour, stand for an hour as motodachi. He'd get in his car, still had his don tare on. He'd drive to our dojo, and he'd park up outside. He'd come inside, and he'd put on his men, and he'd do another hour, standing as motodachi for jigeko. And every week, every day, so every practice, I'd go and stand and queue to practice with him. And I must have been about like 26, 27, something at the time. And I was still like really into competing, doing my competitive stuff. And I was like, I totally got it wrong. The way I was practicing with him, I spent the sort of 2 minutes or whatever it was that I had with him just trying to beat him. And, I'd kind of, do a feint here and hit kote, and okay, and then do hikido or something like this, and then do kind of feint here and hit men around here, something like this, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm so good, I'm beating up this 7th dan. And I did that for like maybe 2 or 3 months at every practice, and I came away from Keiko thinking, oh yeah, I did really well today, I was really good. And essentially what happened one day is, in the middle of my practice with sensei, is out of nowhere, just when I didn't realize I was not able to do anything, I remember his shinai hitting my men, and he hit this men on me, and I remember it kind of not just hitting my men, but it hit my heart, it hit my soul. I remember thinking, oh, it's like he just switched the lights off for a minute. And I remember thinking, wow, where did that come from? And I went away from the dojo that night, like, I was really considering it a lot. And I came away with the conclusion that I'd spent the last few months basically just satisfying my own ego by beating up this guy who was, obviously a lot older than me, who wasn't he wasn't standing there as a competitor, he was standing there as a sensei, and I totally missed the point. And all I've been doing is, like I say, satisfying my own ego, and not really been trying to improve my own kendo. I just thought that I was doing that by making myself feel good. Now, what I did is I then thought to myself, well, crikey, okay, I need to go away, and the next time I practice with him, I need to throw away all of these kind of periphery waza that are just there to satisfy myself, these kind of feint kote or feint men, or these sort of tricky type waza, and stop trying to beat him with speed, because of course I'm faster than him. I'm decades younger than him. Of course I was faster than him. And from now on, I'm only gonna try and attack men or Debana men, because he's been doing Kendo longer than I've been alive, and you know, if I can hit Divana Men on him, then I'm getting somewhere. Okay, then I'm getting somewhere. That means something. And I spent the next sort of 3 months only attacking men on him and just trying to study when I should do that. When was the right time for me to hit? When was the right time for me to go? How could I try and entice him to hit? Now, of course, I could never do that. And then there was one time, finally, where I managed it. I got this Divana Men, and it was like it all came together. And that's where I sort of felt like I looked back on the last few months where I'd failed to hit. I'd failed. But actually I'd made the most improvement, because what I'd been doing is I'd been setting that challenge against myself, which I think that's part of what Kendo really is. You know, it's not just, as I've said before, he wasn't stood there as a competitor, he was stood there as a teacher, and that's how I used my practice with him in that context. That's how I started using my practice with him in that context, and that's what helped me grow. So what I'm getting at, to come back to the question now after that little story, is that basically, yeah, I mean, of course you can attack Kote and Kote Men, but what my point is you're not supposed to be competing when you're stood with Sensei. And it depends on the Sensei, of course, it depends. But very high level Sensei, much older, that's got lots more experience, generally they're going to stand there as a teacher, in the role of the teacher. And the goal isn't to just beat them or hit them as much as you can. They're presenting you with the chance to polish your Kendo and polish your spirit. So as I said yesterday, you have to face that full on and be proactive, but not trying to, you know, not trying to just do the tricky stuff that's going to get a quick, cheap point sort of thing. I think that's my sort of point, really. Of course, not just, you know, not only attacking men. You don't only have to attack men. Kote men, sure. I'd hold off on stuff like Gyakudo, stuff like that. Probably. But again, that depends on the teacher, though. That depends on the teacher. If it's somebody that's, you know, you've got to kind of judge that with the teacher that you're practicing with as well. All right. So it's a bit difficult. Okay. Hi Andy, I recently did an Ishijiai, it was more like a keiko, with my Kendo sensei, me in Ju Kendo and him in Kendo, and it really was a lot of fun, and it pushes both partners out of their comfort zone. I have the impression though that some sensei frown upon their student beginning the study of another weapon, or have a kind of aristocratic view of Kendo being superior to other martial arts. My questions are, 1, are these kind of cross-weapon practice competition common in Japan? 2, how do Japanese Kendo sensei consider other Japanese martial arts? 3, do Japanese Kendo sensei practice multiple weapons / arts brackets outside of their Kendo Iaido pair? Thanks for the video, they're great, thank you very much. Okay, I'm gonna have to be careful with this one again, or I'm gonna set off another internet flamestorm. Yeah, I've got to be careful here, because I don't want to... I mean, the point of this is that I'm supposed to put across my opinion, all right, even if it's controversial. Here's my controversial opinion, all right? I'm going to get it out. And I know I probably shouldn't. I don't like Ishijiai. I don't think it should happen. Maybe it shouldn't not happen, that's a bit harsh. But I've got no interest in doing it. Kind of when you mix Naginata and Kendo, or Ju Kendo and Kendo and stuff like that. You hit the nail on the head, right? I tell you what, you hit the nail on the head. It was really fun, right? Cool. That's what it's there for. In my book, it's for fun. So that's cool. You know what I mean? If you're into that, then go and do it. That's great. I'm not, so I don't do it. I've had the opportunity and I've turned it down a few times. It does happen in the Kyoto Taikai. It says, are these kind of cross-weapon practice common in Japan? They're not common in Japan. Very rarely happens, very, very occasionally. I've seen it a handful of times. I know it can happen at the Kyoto Taikai, because the people who've got the do naginata can also enter the Kyoto Taikai. But what happens is if you go into the Kyoto Taikai and your opponent is doing naginata, not Ju-Kendo by the way, because frankly Ju-Kendo is extremely uncommon in Japan, even probably less common than naginata, and naginata is also extremely uncommon. Unlike Kendo, Iaido is uncommon, frankly. Kendo is massively popular. And I'm not just saying that out of bias. I mean, that's just a fact. That's a fact in terms of numbers. It's not massively popular like baseball is, but it's compared to other Budo. I think Kendo is probably the most popular Budo. But yeah, you don't see it with Ju-Kendo. But with naginata, yeah, it can happen. And like I say, it can happen in the Kyoto Taikai. But if you enter the Kyoto Taikai and your opponent is doing naginata, you have to do the Ishiji, then you actually are allowed another match. So you get 2 matches. So you can do another match with somebody that does Kendo as well. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the sort of stance is on it in Japan in terms of the federation. But yeah, if you have to do Ishiji in the Kyoto Taikai, then you get another go. Most people only get one. You only get one match unless you've got someone who does naginata. So no, it's not common in Japan in my experience. How do Japanese Kendo sensei consider other Japanese martial arts? Right. Okay, you were dead right to say that there is, an impression that some sensei frown upon other martial arts and think that Kendo is better. There is an impression. There is sort of there is something of that happening a lot. You know, you do see it a lot, especially outside of Japan. I talked about this before. We often, kind of seem to think that Kendo is not. We think that, but I mean, there is that attitude sometimes that happens where people sort of think, yeah, Kendo's different. It's Kendo's special, and it definitely exists both in Japan and and abroad. That it's certainly considered something special compared to other sports. And I think we do that a bit too much. I think everybody probably does that a bit too much in terms of we think that Kendo is like a really super sacred special thing. Like if you were to compare it to another sport, like, I don't know, football or basketball or something, which is probably a little bit unfair. But it is different. It's because Kendo isn't just a sport. Now, whether it's fair to do that with other Budo or not, well, I have no experience of other Budo, so I would never, ever dream to comment on other Budo and assume that Kendo is better than another Budo in any way. I certainly don't think that Kendo is superior, for example, to Naginata or to Ju-Kendo or to whatever else. Simply because I don't have enough of a knowledge of any of the others to form a fair opinion in that way. And I think most Kendo sensei in Japan probably have a similar stance. I've never met anybody that's kind of negative towards any other martial arts or Budo in Japan. I've never really met with that. Next one, do Japanese Kendo sensei practice multiple weapon arts outside of the Kendo Iaido pair? I'm sure there's some people that do, but I've never met one that does. I've only met people that do Kendo and Iaido. I can't think of anybody I know that's a Japanese national that practices other arts besides Kendo, if Kendo is their main thing, if you know what I mean. You might have senseis from other martial arts. It wouldn't surprise me if you've got like senseis from Ju-Kendo or something that have also got downgraded in Kendo or something. That wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know if it's true or not. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a common thing. Now, I'm going to go back to my my sort of controversial statement a minute ago about the Ishiji, because I don't want to fire things up too much. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying ban it. I'm not saying anything crazy like that, right? All I'm saying is it doesn't interest me. I don't think that there's a lot to be had out of it more than just a bit of fun. I have seen, the occasional thing. people doing it in Japan and outside Japan. But I think it, like I say, personally, I think it exists more for fun and for novelty more than anything else. Okay, I have even seen, and I've been involved in tournaments where Naginata players are also allowed to enter their Kendo, together with the Kendo players. And I always think that that's a really kind of grey area, because I think you've got an issue with Shimpan when that happens, because the criteria for Datotsu is different between different arts, it seems like. But I don't know. I don't have the experience, and I'm not particularly looking to gain much more experience doing it, because I'm a bit of a purist. I like my Kendo. I'm not saying Kendo's better, but I like Kendo. Kendo's what I do. Kendo is life for me. It's everything, and I don't have much outside of that. I live in my own little goldfish bowl as far as that's concerned. Okay, so don't burn me too much with that. Okay. Okay. Right. Next couple of ones. These now I'm going into the Kendo Show early access group. If you're not in it, get in it. It's over on Facebook. There's a link down there in the description. And I'd like to start off by saying that it's always a pleasure to watch your rant videos where you explain. Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed the video. I'm about 5 months into my own journey into Kendo, nearly 2 months in Boga, and I'm going to as many practices as I can, and I'm loving every second. I try to learn as much as I can from my dojo senseis and seniors, but since it's a larger dojo with quite a lot of Kendoka, it's sometimes hard to get more specified tips to improve personally. Therefore, I try to learn on my own time by watching a lot of videos from YouTube. Your videos included, of course. Thank you. And reading from official sources from the internet. Right now, I'd like to expand my knowledge of techniques to practice with my dojo, and as well as get familiar with Shiai rules, since I'll be trying to enter my first tournament soon. What additional specific materials would you recommend? Books, websites, blogs, for beginners to familiar themselves with most up-to-date information with regards to various techniques and rules in Kendo today. Thanks again for your enormous contribution in making information on Kendo so readily available. Thank you very much. Very nice comment. Okay. Okay. It's quite difficult, that, actually. Right. Here's the thing, I'd watch as much YouTube videos. I think somebody's put that on there actually. Watch as much competition videos on YouTube, especially Japanese ones, because especially the top level Japanese ones, like All Japan Championships, because or the 8th Dan Championships. Probably All Japan's is probably a little bit more interesting. So that you can get an idea for the flow of the Shiai, and also the most important thing you need to know for the Shiai is to try and figure out what counts as Yuko Datotsu and what doesn't. The rest of the stuff is kind of periphery. As long as you don't do anything that's like malicious or dangerous, or you don't step out of the Shiaijo, then the most important thing you got to do is figure out how to make a point that counts. So watch that as much as you can. And yeah, I'd keep doing that, to be honest. I think that's the best thing you could do. I mean, there's loads of books out. I think some people have suggested different books and blogs and stuff like that. Definitely worth checking those out too. But yeah, I mean, I just watch the videos. on YouTube, man. I think you'd be fine with that. Okay, I've got a question about not really footwork necessarily, but feet. I've been doing Kendo for a little over half a year, and I've noticed a pattern where by the time we're done doing Suburi, the soles of my feet have become rather dry, which seems to greatly reduce my traction. As a result, when I push off to strike, my left foot frequently slips, which is of course very problematic for having proper kikentai, and greatly reduces the distance I can get with my attacks. None of the other students seem to have this issue. Do you have any tips on how to rough up your feet to improve traction? Right, you don't need to rough up your feet. It's not going to do much good roughing them up. Best thing to do, right, if you can, is get like in Japan they call it a zokin, like a little towel or a little cloth that they use to mop the floors with. You must have seen them, like they use it, they run across the floor. Get a little piece of cloth, little cloth, or like flannel type thing. Wet it. Don't make it so it's dripping wet, but soak it in, run it under the tap or what have you. Squeeze it out so it's damp to the touch. And then have it on the corner on the floor somewhere nearby, and then after Suburi, go and wet your feet on it. And you know, when you start to feel it getting slippy, then use it to dampen your feet. It's a really common practice in Japan. In fact, a lot of dojos just have them dotted around the room, around the edges of the dojo, because the you know, the floor gets slippy as your kind of feet dry out on it. So yeah, I mean, it really depends on the texture of the floor, you see. So yeah, I'd do that if you can, instead of trying to rough up your feet or something like that. You don't want to do that. Okay, so just a little bit of cloth and a bit of water, I think you'll be fine. Okay, last one, and then I'm done. And this is more of a rant again, rather than an actual question, because this isn't a question that was posed. Rather, this was a response to a video that I posted yesterday that the All Japan Kendo Federation put up of the East versus West tournament, the Tozai Taiko. And it was Mr. Takanabe's match, where he scored this amazing Tsuki to win his match. And a debate flared up in the comments, and it was a very, very valid debate. There were some great comments on both sides, and I just wanted to weigh into it without hitting the keyboard. I thought it'd be better for me to do it here. So here's the background of it, okay? Mr. Takanabe goes in for Tsuki. The guy's sort of going back, and Mr. Takanabe steps in, and he does this amazing Tsuki, okay? Hits the ago. And as he pulls out, his shinai comes down and hits the floor as he comes back to kamae. Okay, it's a reasonably old debate now about basically hitting the kensen on the floor after doing Tsuki. And the two sides of the debate, I guess, are does this constitutes bad Zanshin and therefore should not be considered Yuko Datatsu, so it should not be considered the valid point. Or, no, it's a fantastic technique, and he should be given the point anyway. Now, to be clear, right, I don't think anybody in the whole debate that's going on here, or anybody I've ever met, advocates specifically for hitting the shinai on the ground after you do ski. Okay, I don't think anybody thinks, yeah, no, it's really good to do that. Okay, I think the question is here, what we're arguing over here is at what point where does it sit on the kind of scale of being sort of bad enough Zanshin to be considered not ippon. Okay, so we both agree that, like, so both sides agree that it's not good to do it. It's just whether we count that as sort of egregious enough to sort of discount the point itself. So, right now, a couple of the points are saying, you know, a samurai would never slam the katana on the ground, and yeah, I'm sure they wouldn't, but I don't know if they would or not. I don't know, maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, I don't know. I think they probably have more important things on their mind after they just skewered somebody that was trying to kill them. But that's by the by, because I don't think that's a really relevant argument to it. But more importantly, it comes from the point of Zanshin. Is it bad Zanshin? It's kind of, or is it more of a celebration? And I have heard it described as akin to the kind of fist pump celebration, and there is a bit of that, I think. Yeah, I've got you kind of thing. I think there's a bit of that in it. But is it bad enough to say, well, you've done that now, so no point for you? Because if so, then we have to kind of figure out where that line is on other points as well, I feel like. So how about if you hit men and your hands come too far over your head like this, should that be bad Zanshin? And if you hit kote and you'll sort of do this and look like this, even though you hit an amazing kote, straight afterwards you do this sort of thing, maybe that should also count as no point. And maybe if you take your hand off the shinai after hitting do and hold the shinai up like this, which is of course not necessary, this could be considered bad Zanshin and maybe not enough for a point. So the problem is at the minute that isn't where we are. Okay, at the minute most people don't like any of these actions, but if the actual point itself is good enough, we'll forgive it. You know, we'll generally forgive it and award the point. Certainly that's the opinion of the 3 Shinpan that were doing that that particular shiai. I'm inclined to agree with them, but the great thing about Kendo being sort of judged by the metric of Yuko Datotsu, and that being a kind of subjective thing based on your experiences. If you disagree with that and you think, no, if you hit the shinai on the ground after Tsuki, then that means you shouldn't get the point, then you're perfectly entitled as a Shinpan not to award the point in that case. But we can't, the problem is if we said to everybody, everything that you're not supposed to do, if you do it in the shiai, then we won't award you any points, then we're going to see a drastic reduction in points scored, and shiai are going to become a somewhat boring affairs. So I think we've got to figure out really where, whether it's really harsh enough, whether it's too harsh really to say that. I personally think it is. I did a bit of searching around before I came to film this, because I had this in mind after reading the comments, and there's a handful of like Ippon compilations on YouTube of just Tsukiwaza, and I'd say a good majority of them, a majority of them at all different levels, from high school right up to 8th dans, a good majority of them show the actual striking the shinai on the floor afterwards, and all of them get awarded. And these are from a variety of periods as well, even going back to the 70s. I found a couple of Tsuki that were scored in the 70s where they score. I'm not going to name the sensei that did it, but very, very famous one. Did a ski and then hit the floor afterwards. So it's something that's been going on, well, for, since the 70s at least, probably before that. So whether... I'm not saying that's an excuse for it. I'm not saying that it's a good thing. I'm not arguing the case for it. All I'm saying is that it's something that's happening. It's kind of, I think it's more than half of it is like a habit. And I think there's a bit of, I don't know if celebration's the right word, but I do think that it's a kind of, a kind of, what's the right word? It's a kind of over-exaggeration of the kime. If I add that word, the kime of the waza, it's a kind of over exaggeration of it. But yeah, I mean, it happens. It gets awarded, and I don't think it's going to stop getting awarded just because of that. I think Tsuki falls into Genmyo no waza. I talked about Genmyo no waza being particularly difficult waza. You've got a target this big to hit. And if you hit it, then it's pretty much, you've got to do something pretty bad to spoil it after that, because you've achieved something that's very, very difficult. So there's that argument as well. That's my stance on that. But what do you think? You can leave a comment. Let me know. Let me know what I'm wrong about the Tsukiwaza, or maybe you think that I'm totally out of order for saying that about Ishijii. Fine. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about next time. Give me some questions to deal with, and don't forget as well, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff, and shop at KendoStar because we're the best. Okay, see you next time.